We have the world champion Domaraju Gukesh entering in. It's the third round of the European Club Cup, and Gukesh is playing his first game for the team Super Chess. The first two rounds, Gukesh took rest, and the opposition was not that strong. But now, today, he takes on Sergei Movsesian, 2600 rated Grandmaster from Armenia. Sigil Fund Pardubis is the name of the team. Well, actually, originally from Armenia, now Movsesian also lives in Czech Republic. Sergei Movsesian had a career high rating of 2750. So he's a world class grandmaster. Gukesh will definitely have his task cut out today in his game against Sergei. Gukesh has had pretty tough event at the Grand Swiss where he lost 3 games in a row and had a very tough time. Here he'll be looking to get back on track. His rating has come down to 2752 as all the players get up for a moment's silence for Daniel Naroditsky, who passed away shockingly 2 days ago. And yeah, a big loss to the world of chess. And the players get ready for the round handshake, and the clock begins. What is Gukesh's first move going to be? He plays knight to f3, keeping all the flexibility intact. And Movsesian pushes his pawn to d5. Interesting moment in the game. What is Gukesh's move going to be? He responds with pawn to g3. The reason for this is that you can play c4, d4, many different ways to play this position. Bishop comes out to g4, putting pressure on the knight, and Gukesh plays his bishop to g2. Movsesian goes knight to d7. He chooses a very interesting setup here. Maybe black is angling for a quick e5. Gukesh plays pawn to h3, asking a question to the black bishop. The bishop goes back to h5. And Gukesh now castles. Will black play e5 here? Could be an interesting move to try to gain space in the center. He goes pawn to c6, solidifying the center here. And white plays pawn to d3. Knight comes out to f6. And what will Gukesh do next? He plays pawn to c4, which is a very logical move. He has 1 hour 32 minutes on the clock, so this is his preparation. And I think a very logical try is now e6. Although Movsesian takes on f3, and Gukesh can actually take back here. I'm a bit surprised. What's the idea? Maybe the idea is d takes and knight e5. That's what perhaps he wants to do, attacking c4 and f3. So Gukesh actually directly takes with the pawn. It does spoil his structure a bit, but he will go f4 next and open up his bishop here. Movsesian plays pawn to g6, getting the bishop on that diagonal here to g7. And Gukesh goes pawn to f4, opening up the bishop. And Sergei plays bishop g7. Black's position is very solid. He might even go e6 and really make this strong triangle setup against the bishop on g2. But first Gukesh plays knight to d2. And I believe that black can go normally, but Movsesian goes for something very active. He attacks the pawn on d3 straight away with the knight jumping to c5. Knight comes to f3. He puts his knight on a good square here. Knight to f3, defending the d3 pawn. Takes d takes c3. And now d takes c4. D takes c4. Maybe the queens can be traded here. Movsesian does it. Queen takes queen. And rook takes d1. Does white have a very tangible edge to play for the full point here? We'll see. Knight d7 played. And Gukesh goes bishop e3. A very interesting move. Sacrificing the b2 pawn. And I believe this is how Gukesh loves to play, really sharpen up the play. Bishop b2 even in a queenless position. The bishop takes the pawn. And now Gukesh goes rook b1. Getting the open file, but the b7 pawn is anyway defended. So bishop comes back to f6. And let's see what Gukesh does here. He has a very, very interesting exchange sacrifice. He goes for it. What a move. If you take with the king, bishop takes c5. My goodness, I'm totally shocked here. Knight takes d7. Gukesh is not just an exchange down, he's also pawn down. He gets back one of the pawns. Notice how it's now not possible to castle as the knight is hanging. And Gukesh gets up from the chair. Knight b6 played, attacking the pawn on c4. Well, what an interesting position this is. And now knight e5 looks like the logical move. He plays it. And the bishop takes c6 is also a threat now. So I think black must castle here. That does make sense because bishop e5 will be met with a check first. So Movsesian does castle and Gukesh now takes on c6 with the knight. But knight takes c4 is hanging here. Black must take it. He takes it. Movsesian moving correctly, matching move for move against Gukesh here. Bishop c5 coming in, putting pressure on e7. How many times have we seen a position where minor pieces have been equivalent to a rook? And this is crazy. And Gukesh now chops off the e7 pawn. Well, the thing is, you don't want to be taking bishop e7 because after bishop takes e7, the king is weak, the rook is hanging. If rook e8, there's bishop d5 with a big attack. So he plays rook f d8. And Gukesh goes knight to d5. Black's position already looking okay with rook b8, offering a trade perhaps. But he goes knight d6, which is also a fine move. And Gukesh comes back. Rook to b1. And Movsesian once again finds the best move. Rook a c8. Attacking the bishop on c5. Gukesh chops off the a7 pawn. And now knight comes to f5, which is slightly inaccurate. Maybe rook d7 was correct with the idea of knight jumping into c4. But knight f5, and now Gukesh has a chance to get an advantage with bishop b6 and then a4, a5 rushing down the board. He finds it. Bishop to b6 played. Whew. Rook to d6. And now an important move that Gukesh must find. He finds it. Knight to f6. Amazing, because now taking here is important. But with what piece? He takes with the king. And the a pawn rushes down the board. a4. Incredible chess. This is. I'm kind of speechless here. How Gukesh has believed in his position and has got a lot to play for here. But Movsesian is still fighting. He brings his rook behind the a pawn, stopping it in its tracks. And Gukesh goes bishop f1. Maybe it was better to put the bishop on b7, but he puts it on f1. Knight comes to d4. And king comes up to g2. And guys, notice that we are now on move 30. 10 more moves to make before they hit move 40. And a huge mistake from Sergei. He had to play knight e6, stay here, have that possibility. But knight c6 now means that Gukesh has a chance to push the pawn forward with a6. And I think Movsesian has blundered big time. a6 found. What a strong move now. He goes knight e7. Now another important move that needs to be found is g4. Wow. Gukesh playing on both sides. He's trying for some kind of an attack here. Knight c8. But now bishop c5. This king is also not safe. Gukesh finds it with just 7 seconds on the clock. Rook takes a6 taken. And he's hoping that Gukesh will take the exchange. But rook b8. Another crazy move with 2 seconds on the clock. Rook c6 played by Movsesian, who also had 2 seconds on the clock. But now rook takes c8 is winning. Takes it. Beautiful move, and Movsesian shaking his head there. He knows that it's all over. Bishop takes d6. And Gukesh now has 2 bishops and a pawn. King to e6 played. Bishop e5 brings the bishop back into the center. And f6. This position should be technically winning, but maybe some difficulties because the pawns are all on one side. Rook c1 and bishop e3 played. The rook comes up to d3, c3 here, and bishop t4. Rook comes to c1. They have reached move 40, which means that both players get 30 extra minutes on the clock. Gukesh gets up. It's your chance to be able to go to the washroom and come back and freshen up yourself, eat something. And he finds the move f5 with 5 minutes of thought. Excellent move here by Gukesh. And of course the point is, after gf5, g takes f5, king f5, there's check and h7 pawn would hang. So gf, king comes to f7. And now, well, in order to win this position, you need to kind of gang up on one weakness. King comes to g7, and right now the weakness is the f6 pawn. So if you can somehow get your king in, that could be good. Rook c2. Gukesh brings his king up to f3. And while Movsesian is surely not too happy with himself there, rook goes to a2. And Gukesh goes king e3. And the team of Super Chess there has only 2 players playing now. Rest have finished their games. Rook goes back to a8. Gukesh's game per se is not super important from the team winning perspective, because already Maksudlu won his game, Sarana won his game, Darda won his game, even Lupulescu managed to win his game. So they are doing pretty well, Super Chess here. But I'm fairly sure that Gukesh wants to also personally do really well in this tournament. So this is his chance to get his classical rating up there. King e4. And that's one thing about Gukesh. He's always motivated, and whenever he faces a tough battle or a tough struggle, he comes back even stronger. Check. Now king to c5. Doing it step by step here. No hurry. You have a check. And now bishop c6 blocking the check makes a lot of sense. Rook d8. Bishop comes to d5. And he goes rook c8 check. The win is definitely slightly tedious because, another check here. But Gukesh is making progress step by step. He is improving the position. King goes to e6. Now attacking the pawn on f6. So check on e8. And king moves to d7. He jumps in rook e1. The bishop blocks out the rook. Rook goes to d1. Comes back with his king. King to e6. Rook to d3. And look at Gukesh's focus there. Bishop to c5. He finds the move. And one of the main plans is bishop e7, take on f6. Goes rook d1. Trying to meet bishop e7 with a check. He goes f3 so as to block this back with the bishop here. Rook check. And now Gukesh blocks with the bishop, preparing a bishop e7. So the rook comes to the side now. If you play bishop e7, he wants to give a check here on a6. So bishop d4 is played. In comes a check, but now king e7. And you will see that there's no check. The rook also doesn't have squares here. Seems like it's Zugzwang time. There's no more move here. And Movsesian resigns with a smile. What an amazing game by Gukesh. And I think in general, Movsesian had very decent chances in the game as he analyzes there with Gukesh. But somehow, Gukesh's exchange sacrifice was just so interesting. And let's go back to that position to actually see how Gukesh managed to have that courage to give up his exchange there. So in this position, Gukesh first chops off the piece on d7, then takes on b7, and I think Movsesian played really well until now. Knight c6, knight c4, bishop comes up, and at this point it felt like Black has everything under control, but it was at this moment where rook d7 would have been much better. Yeah, it's a bit scary to allow knight b6, but there is rook a7 and knight c8 is defended. So that's the reason why. But knight f5 allowed now the entire combination of the a pawn and the bishop pair to become like extremely strong. And from there, Gukesh took over. He played step by step here, trying to put through Movsesian in great trouble. Also, this move g4 was insanely good. And then bishop c5 was another brilliant move found by him. And now rook b8, another amazing blow. At this point, he blundered with rook c8. I mean rook c6 and rook c8. But actually, it's not really a blunder. What move can you make? Like if you go knight e7, I can simply take on a6, which is very strong. But yeah, there's not too many options, and this one was winning, and Gukesh step by step converted it into a win. So a big congratulations to Gukesh here, not just for winning this game, because a win against 2600 opposition is not a particularly a big deal for Gukesh, who is the world champion, but what is very special is the way in which he tried to sort of create his chances and win his game. You can see in the background the coach of the Super Chess team, Ivan Sokolov, is there waiting for Gukesh to set up his pieces. And yeah, There will be 4 more games left in this tournament, and we'll be looking forward to see Gukesh in action in the remaining games.